tried this now a couple of times. I know what to do. It's just a little bit messy. So the volume will be pi 0 to 1, and it's this length, x2, minus this length, x1. Um, the bigger length is in the pi over 2 to pi, and the smaller length in the 0 to pi. So that bigger length would be, so let's see, if this is pi, and this is sine inverse y. So it's pi. So pi minus sine inverse. So pi minus sine inverse y squared dy minus sine inverse y squared dy. So that'll be pi 0 to 1. Add them together, pi, and then subtract them. Pi minus sine inverse minus sine inverse. So that's pi minus 2 sine inverse y dy. So that's pi squared 0 to 1 pi minus 2 sine inverse y dy. And then 0, 1 here. So I'll need a substitution. But I think what I'll do is I'll separate this integration out. So that's pi squared 0 to 1 pi dy minus 2 pi squared 0 to 1 sine inverse y dy. So that would be pi y. So that would be pi cubed minus 2 pi squared 0 to 1 sine inverse y dy. Now, substitution. Let's say u equals y sine inverse y. So that means du dy will be sine inverse y plus y over root 1 minus y squared. So then integrating, I'll get u 0 to 1 equals integration of sine inverse y 0 to 1 dy. And then integrating this, it's actually just a reverse chain rule, because if you have y equals 1 minus y squared power a half, then dy, or let's call that x or something, dx dy will be a half 1 minus y squared minus a half times minus 2y. The 2's cancel, so just apart from the minus. So if I put a minus here, then that becomes a plus. So integrating that will be minus root 1 minus y squared 0 to 1. u1 sine inverse 1, that's pi over 2. So that's pi over 2 equals the integration from 0 to 1 sine inverse y dy minus, and then if I put in 1, I'll get 0, and I put in 0, I'll get minus, and put in 0, I'll get 1. So that's minus minus, so that'll be plus 1 at the back. Plus 1 at the back. So pi over 2 minus 1 is 0 to 1. sine inverse y dy. Pi over 2 minus 1. Okay, so that would be pi cubed minus 2 pi squared. Pi over 2 minus 1. So that would be pi cubed minus 2 pi cubed plus 2 pi squared. Sorry, there's no 2 there. The 2 is cancelled. Just pi cubed. So these cancel. And you're left with 2 pi squared units cubed, which is correct.